It was a cold winter morning in the quiet town of Nurabad. The streets were empty, and a soft fog floated above the ground. Most people stayed inside their warm homes, but one person walked slowly toward the old market. It was Uma, a woman in her late 70s. She wore a long black shawl and walked with a wooden stick. Her steps were slow but steady. Everyone in town knew Uma Zarina, not because she talked much, she didn't, but because of her strange habits. Every year, on the same date, she would come to the small candle shop at the corner of the street, and buy only one candle. She never bought anything else, never said much, and always left quietly. No one ever asked her why. People said it was a painful story, and maybe she didn't want to remember it. Inside the candle shop, a young man named Sammy had just started working. It was his first winter there. He was only 21, full of questions and curiosity. The shop owner, Baba Karim, was an old man who knew everyone's story but rarely shared it. As the little bell above the shop door rang, Sami looked up and saw Harama Zarina. She moved toward the shelf, picked a plain white candle, and placed it on the counter. Her hands trembled slightly, and her face looked tired and pale. Sami smiled. "Good morning, Amma. Just one candle." She didn't answer. She simply nodded, took out some old coins wrapped in cloth, placed them on the counter, and waited. Sami looked at Baba Karim. The old man slowly shook his head with a quiet warning in his eyes. "Just give her the candle," he whispered. Sami obeyed and handed her the candle carefully. "Thank you," she said softly. Her voice was thin, like a whisper carried by the wind. She turned and walked away. Sami watched her as she left. "Who is she?" he asked. Baba Karim sighed. "That is Uma Zarina. She's been coming here for 20 years. Same day, same candle." "Why?" Sami asked, curious. "No one knows for sure," Baba Karim said. "Some say she lost her children in a fire. Others say something even worse happened, but no one dares to ask her." Sami couldn't stop thinking about her. There was something in her eyes, so much pain, but also something else. Hope? Guilt? He didn't know. Later that day, Sami stepped outside the shop just in time to see her turning a corner. Something inside him said he needed to follow her. Not to disturb her, but maybe just to understand. He walked behind her quietly, keeping a distance. She didn't notice him. She walked past the busy street, past the old well, and into a quiet area near the edge of the forest. There, she stopped in front of a small, broken house. Its windows were cracked, and the paint had faded. It looked abandoned, like no one had lived there in years. But she walked up to the door, opened it, and went inside. Sami hid behind a tree and waited. Through a small window, he saw her place the candle in the middle of a dusty old table. She lit it. The tiny flame danced gently in the dark room. Then, she sat in a wooden chair and looked at the candle. Her shoulders were shaking. She was crying. Sami's heart sank. He saw old photos on the wall, pictures of a boy and a girl. But something strange, both faces had lines scratched across them. It was like someone tried to erase their identities. He wanted to leave, to give her space. But before he could move, she spoke. "Hassan," she whispered. "Where are you?" Then silence. Sami's eyes widened. Who was Hassan? Her son? The flame flickered once, and her tears kept falling. The wind blew stronger now, making the trees around the house sway. Sami slowly stepped back, careful not to make a sound. But just as he turned, a branch snapped under his foot. Amma Zarina looked up sharply. "Who's there?" she called out. Sami froze. Her voice wasn't angry. It was full of fear, and maybe hope. "Is it you?" she asked again. Sami took a deep breath and slowly stepped forward from behind the tree. "It's me, Sami, from the candle shop." She looked at him for a long moment, then turned away. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "I'm sorry, Amma. I wanted to understand." She didn't reply. She kept staring at the candle. "Every year you come," Sami said gently. "Every year, one candle. Why?" She was silent for a long time. Then, in a voice that barely carried through the wind, she said, "Because the candle still waits, even when no one comes back." Sami didn't understand. She stood up slowly and pointed to a locked room at the back of the house. "That room hasn't been opened in 20 years, she said. "It's waiting too." "What happened here?" Sami asked softly. Amma Zarina didn't answer. She turned and walked back to her chair, her eyes on the candle. Sami stood there for a few more seconds, the cold air biting his skin, his heart heavy. Then he quietly turned and walked away. But one thing was sure. This was not just an old woman and a candle. This was a story waiting to be told. And the flame had only just begun to flicker. Sami couldn't sleep that night. His mind kept returning to the old house, the candle's soft flame, and Amma Zarina's broken voice whispering the name Hassan. He didn't know what pulled him in so deeply, why a stranger's pain felt so personal, but something about her sorrow refused to leave him alone. The next morning, he returned to the shop early. His eyes were tired and his thoughts scattered. "Baba," Karim noticed. "You followed her, didn't you?" the old man asked without looking up from the counter. Sami nodded slowly. "I just wanted to know what she hides in that house." Baba Karim sighed and shook his head. "Some things are better left buried." But Sami didn't believe that. He waited until his shift ended, and instead of going home, He walked straight to the edge of town, back to the broken house. This time, he walked up to the front door and knocked gently. Soft footsteps approached from inside. The door opened a little. Zarina stood there, her eyes tired and red from crying. She didn't look surprised to see him again. "You came back?" she said. Sami nodded. "I want to understand. I won't tell anyone. I just want to listen." She looked at him for a long moment, then slowly opened the door wider and let him in. The air inside was thick with dust and silence. The candle from yesterday had melted into a small pool of wax on the table. A wooden chair sat near it, still warm from being used. She motioned for Sami to sit down across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she said, "That room has been locked for 20 years. She looked toward the back of the house at a door with a rusty handle. "No one has entered since that night?" Sami asked softly. "What happened that night?" She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "It was a stormy evening. My son Hassan was 17. Stubborn, quiet, sometimes angry, but he was kind too. He always protected his little sister Nasia." She paused for a moment, swallowed, then continued. "We had a fight. I told him he couldn't go out to see his friends. I shouted. He shouted back. He said he was leaving and never coming back." Sami sat quietly, listening as her voice trembled. He slammed the door and went out into the rain. Nasia. She followed him. "I didn't notice until it was too late." Her voice broke now. "The house caught fire. No one knows how. Maybe lightning, maybe something else. I searched and screamed. I found only parts of the room burned, but Hassan and Nasia were gone." Sami's eyes widened. "Gone," she nodded. "The fire was put out quickly. The damage wasn't much, but my children, they had disappeared. People said they ran away, others said they burned inside. Never saw them again." Sami's throat felt dry. "And the candle?" She looked at the melted wax. "I light one every year. On the day they vanished, I wait. Light is the only thing that still listens." There was pain in her eyes, deep and raw. She looked at the locked room again. "I couldn't open that door. It was their room. Their voices still live inside. I hear them at night. Laughing, crying, sometimes calling my name." The house felt colder now. Sami wanted to say something, but no words came. The silence stretched between them. Then suddenly, Zarina stood up and walked toward the locked door. She pulled out a small key from a chain around her neck. Her hands shook. She looked back at Sami. "Should we open it?" He stood and nodded. Slowly, she placed the key in the lock. It turned with a click. The door creaked open. The air from inside felt different, colder, deeper. It was a small room, 2 beds on each side, toys scattered on the floor, books on a broken shelf. It looked like time had stopped. The room hadn't changed in 20 years. It was frozen in their last moment. Sami stepped in slowly. He saw a notebook on the bed's corner. He picked it up and opened it. Inside were drawings. A boy holding a candle, a girl standing in the rain, a house on fire. Sami showed it to her. She covered her mouth, tears falling silently. "They left messages," she whispered. "They knew something." Sami turned the pages. A note was written in the back. "If we ever leave, maybe someone will light a candle and find us." The words shook him deeply. They were planning something. He said, "Am." Zarina nodded slowly. "Maybe they weren't running from me. Maybe they were running from something else." Sami looked at her. "Do you think they're still out there?" She didn't answer. She just looked at the candle wax on the table and said, "If they are, they'll see the light." Outside, the wind picked up. The trees whispered against the window. Sami walked out slowly, his heart full of questions. One thing was clear now. The story wasn't over yet. Sami couldn't stop thinking about the notebook. He took pictures of the drawings and the message inside. "If we ever leave, maybe someone will light a candle and find us." Those words played in his mind like a quiet song full of mystery and sadness. He sat in his room staring at them again and again. What were Hassan and Nasia trying to say? Were they warning someone? Were they planning to leave even before the fire? And why hadn't they returned if they were alive? The next morning, Sami returned to the candle shop. Baba Karim watched him closely. "You look tired," the old man said. Sami didn't answer. He kept looking at the drawings in his phone. "Do you remember anything about the night Zarina's house caught fire?" Baba Karim's eyes narrowed. He walked slowly to the back of the shop, poured 2 cups of tea, and handed one to Sami. "I remember too much," he said in a low voice. "That night was strange. The rain was heavy. The power in the town went out. Screams came from her house. People ran, but by the time they got there, the fire had already started." Sami leaned in. "Only one room burned, right?" Baba Karim nodded. "And that was the strange part. The rest of the house was untouched. It was like the fire had been placed only there. Deliberate, clean." Sami frowned. "Do you think someone did it on purpose?" The old man looked uneasy. There were whispers. Hassan was close with the son of the town mayor. The mayor didn't like that. Friendship, some say. He warned Hassan to stay away. Others say he made threats. Sami felt a chill run down his back. Why would a mayor threaten a boy? Baba Karim lowered his voice. Because secrets hide behind powerful walls, and Hassan was asking too many questions. Sami left the shop with a storm of thoughts in his head. He walked to the old town library and began looking through newspaper records from 20 years ago. He found a report. Small fire in Nurabad home, 2 children missing. No names, no photos, no follow-up story. It felt like someone wanted the event forgotten. Then he found another article from the same week. Mayor Rashid's son injured in a falsifer's head injury. Something didn't feel right. The same night Hassan disappeared. The mayor's son was hurt. Sami made a note and decided to visit someone who might remember more. The town's oldest resident, Chacha Harun, was known for his memory and sharp eyes. Sami found him sitting under a tree feeding birds. Chacha, do you remember Zarina's children? Harun nodded slowly. Bright kids. Hassan always helped me carry water. Natsia was quiet but smart. Sami asked, did anything happen before they disappeared? Chacha Harun's eyes narrowed. There was shouting outside her house one evening. Hassan and the mayor's son were arguing. Then Hassan disappeared. Sami leaned forward. What were they fighting about? Harun shook his head. Something about a photo, a secret, something Hassan found. That night, Sami visited Zarina again. She opened the door without a word and let him in. He showed her the old articles and told her everything he had learned. She sat quietly for a long time. I always knew there was more to that night, she said, but no one would believe me. A poor widow against a rich man who would listen. Sami said softly, I will. She looked at him and smiled faintly. You have their heart. You don't give up. Suddenly something clicked in Sami's mind. He rushed to the locked room again and opened the drawer near the bed. He began searching, removing old books and boxes. Finally, he found a hidden space behind the drawer. A small envelope rested inside. Dusty. Sealed. He opened it gently. Inside were 3 photos. One of Hassan, standing with a boy in school uniform. The second of the same boy holding a metal box with strange documents. And the third, blurred but clearly, showed the mayor's son giving something to a man in a car. Sami showed them to Zarina. Do you know what this is? She took a deep breath. Hassan once told me he had seen something at the mayor's house. He said people were coming at night with suitcases. That money was changing hands. Sami's eyes widened, and he tried to collect proof. She nodded. I told him to stay quiet to protect himself, but he said the truth must be known. Sami whispered, maybe that's why he ran. Maybe he knew they would come for him. The candle flickered again. Zarina whispered. He didn't leave me because he was angry. He left to protect me. Sami stood up. If he's alive, I'll find him, and Natsia too. Outside, the wind carried soft whispers again, a promise in the air. The past was not forgotten. It was just waiting for the right moment to return. The next morning, Sami woke up with a new sense of purpose. He couldn't ignore the signs anymore. Hassan hadn't just disappeared, something had forced him to leave, and that something was still hidden behind layers of fear and silence. Sami packed the photos in a folder and walked straight to the local newspaper office. It was a small building with faded paint and an old receptionist who barely looked up when he entered. I need to speak with someone who writes real stories, he said firmly. She pointed him toward a desk in the back where a middle-aged man with tired eyes typed slowly on a keyboard. His name tag read Fahim Sami, introduced himself and laid the photos on the table. Fahim raised an eyebrow. Where did you get these? Sami explained everything, from the candle to the drawings from the locked room to the hidden envelope. Fahim listened quietly, then leaned back in his chair. This is dangerous, he said finally. You're talking about digging up dirt on a man who still has powerful friends. Sami didn't blink. I'm not afraid. The truth deserves light, not darkness. Fahim stared at him for a moment, then smiled faintly. I'll help you, but we need more proof. Photos from 20 years ago won't shake anyone now. Sami nodded. I'll find it, he said. Later that day, he returned to Zarina's house. She was waiting for him with tea and silent eyes. He told her about the journalist and the need for more evidence. She stood up, walked to her cupboard and pulled out a small wooden box. She opened it carefully. Inside were old letters, yellow with age, tied with a red ribbon. These were Hassan's, she said quietly. He wrote them when he stayed hidden at my sister's house for a few weeks before he vanished completely. Sami's hands shook as he untied the ribbon. Each letter was filled with fear and determination. Hassan had been watching the mayor's house. He had seen people exchanging briefcases late at night. He mentioned documents that proved illegal land deals and money laundering. In one letter he wrote, if anything happens to me, I'ma keep the truth alive. Sami folded the letters gently and looked up. This is what we need. He rushed back to Fahim and handed him the letters. The journalist's eyes widened as he read through them. This is gold, he whispered. We can't publish right away, but I'll start digging on my end. You do the same. Meanwhile, Sami decided to visit someone he hadn't seen in years. His uncle Farouk was once a police officer who retired early after a disagreement with town officials. Sami found him at his small farm pulling weeds from the dry soil. Uncle, I need your help, he said, and showed him the letters and photos. Farouk read them silently, and then sighed. I always suspected foul play. That fire was too clean, too targeted. The mayor's son was questioned for a day, then released with no charges. Sami asked, can you find out where Hassan went after leaving your sister's house? Farouk nodded. I'll make some calls. I know a few people in Karachi who might remember something. Sami thanked him and left, his heart pounding with new hope. That night he visited again. She looked older somehow, as if the memories were draining her strength, but her eyes lit up when he shared what he had done. You remind me of him, she said softly. Hassan never let go once he believed in something. Sami smiled. I won't give up, Amma, I promise. The next day Farouk called with news he had found a man in Karachi who used to run a shelter for runaway teens. A boy matching Hassan's description had stayed there under a false name for a few months, then disappeared again with a burn scar on his left shoulder. Umma's face turned pale when she heard that Hassan had a burn scar. She whispered from the night of the fire. He never talked about it, but I saw it once. Sami knew they were getting closer. He asked Farouk to take him to Karachi. Together they traveled. By bus, the journey long and full of silence and thoughts. At the shelter, they met the man who remembered Hassan clearly. Brave boy, he said, but always looking over his shoulder. One day he left a note and vanished. Said he had to go protect someone. Sami showed him the drawings from the notebook. The man nodded. That's his work, he used to sketch all the time. Said it helped him think. Sami's heart ached. If Hassan had been alive all these years, hiding, running, living with pain, then he deserved more than a candle every year. He deserved to come home. Farouk promised to continue the search, while Sami returned to Nurabad. A few days later, something unexpected happened. A young man entered the candle shop, holding a small envelope. He looked tired, dirty, and nervous. His hands shook as he placed the envelope on the counter and said, "This is for the boy who asked about the candle." Then he turned and left before anyone could stop him. Sami grabbed the envelope, opened it, and gasped. Inside was a single photo. It showed Hassan as a grown man standing in front of a train with a young girl beside him. Her face was covered with a scarf, but her eyes looked familiar. On the back of the photo were the words, "The flame still burns." Sami ran to Umma's house and showed her the photo. She held it close, tears streaming down her face. "It's him," she whispered, "and that's Natsia. She's alive too." Sami held her hand tightly. "We're going to bring them home. Umma, I swear to you." The candle burned on the table, its flame steady and bright, but now it was no longer alone. It had found its purpose again, and the journey to truth had. Sami couldn't sleep that night. He stared at the photo over and over again. Hassan was alive, and not just that, Natsia too. The girl in the photo had her mother's eyes, the same deep sadness, the same quiet strength. The message on the back, "The flame still burns," was more than just words. It was a sign, a promise, a trail. The next morning, Sami took the photo to Fahim the journalist. Fahim studied it carefully. "This changes everything," he said. "They're not just memories. Now, they're real, and they're out there." Sami nodded. "We have to find them, before someone else does." Fahim leaned back in his chair. "I've been digging too. I found something." He pulled out a printed article from an old archive. There was a train station in Sindh where two people matching their description were seen a few months ago. The girl was working at a small clinic. The man, people say he helped build shelters for flood victims. They used false names, but the scar on the man's neck and shoulder matched Hassan's. Sami's heart pounded. "Do you have the address?" Fahim handed him a piece of paper. "Be careful. If they've stayed hidden for this long, there's a reason." Sami packed a small bag, said goodbye to Oma Zarina, and took the earliest bus. The road to Sindh was long and dusty, with towns and villages passing like ghosts in the window. All the while, Sami kept his hand on the envelope with the photo. After 2 days of travel, he reached the clinic. It was small, made of brick and wood, with a faded sign outside. Inside, a young woman was giving medicine to a child. Sami stepped in quietly, watching her. When she looked up, time seemed to freeze. Her eyes met his. For a moment, no one spoke. Then she whispered, "You followed the flame." Sami nodded slowly. "You're Natsia, aren't you?" Tears filled her eyes. She turned to the nurse beside her and said something quickly, then led Sami outside. Iqua sat on a bench under an old tree. She held the photo in her hand. "I never thought anyone would find us," she said. "Not after all these years." Sami looked at her. "Why did you leave? Why didn't you come back?" She sighed deeply. "We didn't run because we hated our mother. We ran because someone was trying to hurt Hassan. After the fire, Hassan took me, and we disappeared. He thought if he stayed, he'd put us both in danger." "What about Oma?" Zarina, Sami asked. "She thought you died. She lit a candle every year. She never gave up." Natsia wiped a tear. "Hassan wanted to come back many times, but every time he got close, someone warned him to stay away. He said they were watching, even after all these years." "Who?" Sami asked. She looked away. "The same people who started the fire. The ones who wanted to silence Hassan forever?" Sami's voice hardened. "He has proof. We do too. We're going to expose them." Natsia stood up. "Come, you should see him." She led Sami through a narrow alley to a small workshop behind the clinic. There, working with wood and nails, was Hassan. His back was turned. When Natsia called his name, he turned slowly. His eyes met Sami's, full of disbelief. "You're the boy from the shop," he said. Sami smiled. "And you're the boy from the candle." Hassan stepped forward. They shook hands, then hugged, like brothers who'd been lost for years. "I saw your drawings. The notebook, the photos. I followed your story piece by piece," Sami said. Hassan sat down on a stool, his eyes tired but peaceful. "I didn't know if the world still remembered us." Sami nodded. "Your mother did. Every single year. She waited." Hassan looked away. "I thought staying away would keep her safe, but I was wrong. We left her alone in the dark." "Nope. Sami said she had the candle, but now, she needs you both. That night, the three of them sat together in silence. Sami shared everything what he'd found, what Fahim was planning, and how the truth was finally coming into the light. Hassan listened carefully. If we go back, they might try to stop us again. We can't go blindly. Sami pulled out the letters, the photos, and the recordings he'd made from Zarina's stories. We have everything. And people are ready to listen now. Hassan took a deep breath. Then let's finish what we started. The next morning, they boarded a bus back to Nurabad. It was a long and quiet ride. Hassan looked out the window most of the way, his mind full of memories. Nazia held the photo of their mother close to her heart. When they finally arrived in Nurabad, the town seemed different. The sky was clearer. The streets looked warmer. They walked slowly toward the small house. Sami stayed behind to give them space. Zarina was lighting a candle as she did every year. Her hand trembled as she struck the match, but before she could light it, she heard a voice. AMMA. She turned around. The match fell from her hand. There they were, her children, standing in the doorway. Her knees gave out, but Hassan rushed forward and caught her. Nazia knelt beside her, tears falling like rain. Zarina touched their faces again and again, unable to believe it was real. You came home, she whispered. Hassan held her close. We never stopped thinking of you. That night they lit the candle together, but this time, it wasn't a light of waiting. It was a light of return, of reunion, of hope. The flame still burned, but now, it danced with joy. The sun rose slowly over Nurabad, casting golden light through the dusty windows of Zarina's small house. For the first time in 20 years, the house felt alive. Laughter echoed softly in the kitchen as Nazia prepared tea and Hassan helped sit near the window. Her eyes never stopped watching them, like she still feared it was all a dream. But it wasn't. They were really their home, safe, breathing, smiling. Sami arrived early, carrying a brown folder filled with documents. He sat with Hassan at the small table beside the candle that still flickered gently. Fahim is ready, Sami said. He has the letters, the photos, the witness statements. All we need now is your voice. Hassan looked down at the papers, then at his mother, who nodded softly in support. They took everything from us, he said. Our home, our names, our peace. They made us hide like criminals when all we wanted was to speak the truth. Then it's time to stop hiding, Sami replied. That afternoon, Fahim arrived with a small camera and recording equipment. He shook hands with Hassan and Nazia, his eyes full of quiet respect. You don't need to be perfect, he said. Just speak from the heart. They recorded for 2 hours. Hassan told everything from the warnings he received after discovering the mayor's dealings, to the night of the fire, to the years spent in hiding. He explained how he'd seen men carrying briefcases filled with cash, how land papers were burned and replaced with fake ones. He described the threats, the strange car that followed him days before the fire, and the final warning from someone inside the mayor's house. Disappear or face the same fate as another whistleblower who had vanished months before, Nazia added. Her own story, the nights spent moving from town to town, the fear that lived in their shadows, and the pain of leaving their mother behind. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. We didn't just lose our home, she said. We lost our names, our right to be children. When the camera finally stopped, silence filled the room. Even Fahim sat quietly, his hands trembling. This story will shake Nurabad, he whispered. Fahim promised to publish the story in the coming days, not just locally, but on national news websites. He would make sure it reached every corner, but he warned them, when it goes out, they'll come. Not everyone will be happy. That night, Zarina didn't sleep. She sat by the candle, watching its flame. Hassan sat beside her, holding her hand. They'll try to silence you again, she said. But this time, I won't let them. Hassan smiled gently. This time, we're not alone. 2 days later, the article went live. Lost children of Nurabad return with truth that could shake the powerful. Read the headline. It spread like fire. Social media lit up with hashtags. People from other towns began sharing the story. Videos of Hassan and Nasia's interviews gained thousands of views. The town buzzed with questions. Who protected the mayor all these years? Why was the case closed without answers? Why did no one speak for the children? The mayor, now retired but still wealthy and respected, called for a press conference. He stood before cameras and denied all accusations. This is nothing but a story, he said. There is no proof. These children were never harmed. But the documents, the photos, and the letters said otherwise. More voices began to rise. A former clerk came forward and admitted he'd been forced to alter land records 20 years ago. A neighbor remembered seeing men in black suits leaving the house on the night of the fire. And then, someone unexpected appeared. Rashid, mayor's former driver. He arrived at the candle shop, looking old and tired, and asked for Sami. I saw what they did, he said. I was there that night. I was told to keep my mouth shut, but I can't anymore. He gave Sami a small flash drive. On it was a voice recording Rashid and another man discussing the plan to burn the children's room to destroy Hassan's drawings and letters. The voices were clear. The intention was clear. It wasn't just an accident, it was a cover-up. Sami took the flash drive to Fahim, and within hours it became part of the story. The public outrage grew louder. Protests began in Nurabad. People marched with candles, shouting for justice. Zarina stood among them, her hands trembling but her spirit unshaken. A week later, the police reopened the case. Officers arrived at the mayor's mansion. He was questioned for hours. Soon, more arrests followed his assistant, a former officer, a man from the land office. The days passed slowly but peacefully in Nurabad. The wind no longer carried silence, and fear it brought whispers of truth, of change, of healing. Zarina sat outside every evening, her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders, watching people walk by. Some waved, some stopped to say kind words. For 20 years, they had looked at her with pity and curiosity. Now, they looked at her with respect. She had become a symbol of hope, a mother who never gave up. Inside the house, Natsia had begun, teaching small children in the courtyard. Laughter filled the air. Hassan worked on rebuilding the back portion of the house, fixing the walls that had been broken for so long. It was more than just wood and bricks. It was memory. It was healing. Sami visited daily. He brought news from Fahim, updates from the police, and messages from people across the country who had been touched by the story. One day he came holding a stack of letters. "These are from other families," he said. "People who lost children, people who were silenced, people who thought no one would believe them. Your story gave them courage." Hassan read one letter carefully. It was from a woman in another village who had lost her daughter in a similar fire. "They told me it was an accident," the letter said. "But now I wonder." Nazia read another. From a boy who had run away from home and was scared to return. If Hassan could go back, he wrote, "Maybe I can too." Tears welled up in Nazia's eyes. "We were never alone," she whispered. "We just didn't know it." Later that evening, Sami and Hassan sat on the roof under the stars. "You know," Sami said, "this all started because you drew a candle in a notebook." Hassan smiled faintly. It wasn't just a candle. It was a message, for Uma, for anyone who still believed. And now, Sami said, the whole country believes. But even in peace, shadows lingered. One evening, a letter arrived with no name. It was slipped under the door. Inside was a short message. Some fires should stay dead. Hassan read it carefully. Then he burned it in the same candle's flame. "They're afraid," he said. "That means we're doing something right." The next morning, a police officer arrived with an invitation. The court had officially summoned the former mayor and his partners. The trial would begin in 1 week. Hassan and Nasia were called to testify. The news was heavy, but necessary. Zarina stood by her children as they prepared. "I'm not afraid anymore," Nasia said, holding her mother's hand. "Because now we speak the truth with the whole world watching." Sami, Fahim, and even Farouk helped them prepare. Old documents were organized, timelines written out, voices made clear. The night before the hearing, Hassan sat alone in the candlelit room where it had all begun. The drawings were still on the wall, faded but strong. The candle burned in the center of the table. He placed his hand over the flame, gently, not close enough to hurt, just enough to feel the warmth. "I'm ready," he whispered. The next day, the courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the back rows. Cameras were set outside. Nurabad had never seen anything like this before. Hassan walked in with his head high. Natsia walked beside him, her steps firm and her eyes steady. Oma sat in the front row, her shawl wrapped tightly, her hands folded. The judge called the first witness. It was Rashid, the driver. He repeated his story clearly. "I was told to drive to the back of the house," he said. "I saw the men with the briefcase. I saw them enter. I heard the threats. I stayed quiet for years, but no more." The former mayor sat in silence, his face pale. His lawyer tried to argue it was all lies, but the recordings, the documents, and the statements told the truth louder than any defense. Then came Hassan's turn. He stood, his heart pounding, but his voice clear. "I was 17. I saw things I shouldn't have. I wanted to speak up. They tried to silence me. They burned our room. They made me run." He paused, then looked directly at the mayor. "But I didn't run forever. I came back and I brought the truth with me." Natsia followed. She spoke about the years of fear, the struggle, the pain of watching her mother suffer. "We were children," she said, "but they turned us into shadows. Today, we become whole again." The courtroom was silent when she finished. Even the judge's eyes looked heavy with emotion. After hours of testimonies, the session ended. The judge announced that the trial would continue for several weeks, but the first steps had been taken. As they left the building, a crowd waited. Outside they clapped, not loudly, but warmly, with respect, with support. That night, back at home, Zarina lit the candle again, but this time, she wasn't alone. Hassan lit it with her. Nazia stood beside them. Sami placed a second candle next to it, "For the others," he said. "The ones still waiting to be found." And so, the flames burned together, side by side, not for mourning, but for strength. Because sometimes the smallest light can start the biggest change. and in Nurabad the fire of truth had only just begun. A soft rain fell over Nurabad as the final day of the trial approached. The streets were wet and quiet, but the silence carried what a silence full of questions, prayers, and hope. Inside Amma Zarina's home, the candle burned as always, steady and warm. But today, it was surrounded by flowers, small letters, from strangers, and folded hands of neighbors who had once watched from afar but now stood beside her. Hassan dressed slowly in front of the mirror. He wore a plain white kurta, clean but simple. He stared at his reflection for a long time, not as a frightened boy who had once run from fire, but as a man ready to stand tall before the world. Natsia pinned her scarf with calm hands. Her eyes were steady now, no longer full of fear, but purpose. She looked at her mother and kissed her forehead. No matter what happens today, she said, we've already won. Sami waited outside with an umbrella, his clothes damp from the rain. He smiled as they stepped out. Are you ready? Hassan nodded. We were born ready, we just didn't know it then. The courthouse was crowded, far more than before. People from other towns had come to hear the verdict. Journalists lined the gates. Students held candles. Women brought their children, pointing to Hassan and Nasia, telling them stories of bravery. Inside, the judge entered, face firm, eyes unreadable. The room fell silent. He began slowly, recounting the facts, the evidence, the testimonies. He spoke of the fire, the missing children, the cover-ups, the threats, and the silence that followed. And then came the words Nurabad had been waiting for. After reviewing the evidence, this court finds the former mayor and his associates guilty of attempted murder, arson, conspiracy, and destruction of evidence. This is not just justice for a family, it is justice for truth, long buried. They are hereby sentenced to 25 years in prison. Gasps filled the room. Some cried, some clapped, some simply stood in silence, letting the weight of the words sink in. Amma Zarina closed her eyes, her lips moving in silent prayer. Nazia held her hand tightly. Hassan stood still, shoulders shaking, tears falling freely, not from sadness but from release. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sun pushed gently through the clouds. As they stepped out of the courtroom, people surrounded them not with noise, but with warmth. A girl offered Natsia a candle. An old man hugged Hassan. A woman kissed Uma's hands. You gave us courage, she whispered. You reminded us not to forget. Later that evening, back at their home, they gathered in the small courtyard. Sami placed a table in the center with 3 candles. This one, he said, lighting the first, for the truth that was nearly lost. He lit the second, this one for the courage to speak. Then he passed the match to Hassan, and this one for every silent voice that still waits to be heard. Hassan lit the final candle. Its flame rose high, almost dancing. They sat around the light, not needing to speak. Their silence was no longer empty, it was full of understanding, of shared pain and healing. As night fell, Fahim arrived, holding a small envelope. I wanted to give this to you in person, he said. It's from the National Human Rights Board. They've recognized your story. They're starting a new awareness program in your name, the Candle Project. For children who vanish, for mothers who wait. Ima's eyes filled with tears. She held the letter close, so no one else. As to light a candle alone, she whispered. The following week, Sami helped organize a gathering in the town square. People brought candles, photos of missing loved ones, and stories of loss. There were speeches, music, and moments of silence. Hassan stood on stage and spoke to the crowd. We were silent for 20 years, he said. Not by choice, but by force. Today, we speak not just for ourselves, but for all who cannot. Light a candle, tell your story. Even a small flame can break the deepest darkness. Natsia stepped forward too. We are not broken, she said. We are survivors, and we will make sure no one forgets what silence costs. From that day on, Nurabad changed. The people became more aware, more alert, more willing to listen. The candle shop that once stood quietly at the corner now placed a basket near the counter where people could leave messages for those they missed. Every year on the same date, the day Amma Zarina used to light a single candle alone, the entire town lit candles together. Children held hands. Parents hugged tighter. Neighbors stood side by side. And in the center of it all stood Amma Zarina, Hassan, and Nazia, no longer shadows, no longer hidden, but shining examples of what love, truth, and perseverance could do. Sami watched them with pride.